The following is a JourneyWise Network production.
Hey friends, welcome to this episode of JourneyWise podcast. I'm Shane Stanford, and so glad that you're able to join us for what I think will be a very special podcast for anyone who's ever had a little one go off to school or start school. And it doesn't matter if they're in public school or private school or homeschool. Starting the year and how you do that in a good, healthy way is so important. We have Ronnie and I have a couple of guests with us. James is really not a guest anymore. He's part of the team here. He's the one that says the actual smart things that we need occasionally. And then the guest that I am very proud of is Dr. Pokey Stanford, who has a PhD in special ed and who's taught about kids and how to make good school years. She's also a parent advocate whenever you have to talk to school districts, and so has come in very handy as I've listened to the other side of those conversations many years. And so James and Pokey, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And by the way, you live with Pokey.
I do. I live with Pokey. I get the privilege of being her husband. Won her in a lottery 34 years ago. No, just kidding. We've been married soon to be 33 years. 33 wonderful years. Wow. Okay, well, moving back to our topic for the day. Thank you, Ronnie, for reminding me that. Ronnie, how are you doing? I didn't even introduce you, I guess.
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's a good time of the year. Cool summers in Mississippi.
Oh, yes, very cool. Yes.
Very, very nice. But we're having a great time.
Yes, and 103 in the shade, yes. What happens when you get ready for the school year? You've tried to anticipate everything, and yet you still have that queasy part in your stomach because every school year is different, and you're facing what could be some uncertain things. How do you help to bring a little peace and solemnity to the house, to the family? Pokey, I'm going to ask you or James that question.
James, peace. I'll let you answer about peace.
Well, I think first it starts with having the relationship there with your child and frequent conversations. And probably one of the biggest things is just to watch and listen. There's a lot that you can pick up on, nonverbals, hints, and just body language. Asking, when you bring up school, how do they respond? What do they look like when you talk about it? And then, of course, very clearly stating, how do you feel about starting school? But to me, having that relationship is key first and foremost, and that leads to the opportunities to ask those questions and get an honest answer. Sure. And a lot of times they may not know exactly how they're feeling. Mm-hmm. So I think the other thing is just to talk through, normalize, hey, this is normal to be a bit nervous.
Sure.
I can think back to not knowing who was going to be in my class.
Yeah.
And just being nervous about, will I have a friend in there? Mm-hmm. And so using your experience to try to help normalize theirs, I think gives them an opening to start having conversations about how they're feeling.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Pokey?
I agree. I think anytime we start something new, it's an opportunity to talk with our kids about what a new beginning means and how we can take a fresh start. And as we talk about a new school year, to say this is a fresh start. This is a clean slate. We start all over. We're not going to dwell on any failures or lack of progress we made last year. We're going to start this year new. And don't set the expectation so high that it's not attainable. Because sometimes we amp up a new school year and it's not what we said it was going to be. And that's disappointment around the board. For kiddos. But talking is the number one way we really communicate with our kids. We found as our girls were in ages where they didn't really like to communicate with us, we had a nighttime journal. And if there's a question I really wanted answered, I would ask it at night, and then they had 24 hours to respond. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they would come and go, hey, do you really want to answer this? Yeah, I do. And sometimes it was too much to write or so whatever way of communication is where I was going with that.
That's good. Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, they've done that. But I would like to ask a question that Pokey probably would be absolutely the best one to.
Sure, fire away.
And,
yes.
and that is, okay, so we think about getting your child ready for school. Do you have any advice for parents of how to get the teacher ready for their child?
I do. The first thing I encourage parents to do is write a letter to the teacher about your child.
Good.
In a time that you're not overly anxious or overly excited about what's going to happen, but to give that teacher a glimpse into the culture of your family, the values of your family, the expectations you have for the school year. There have been years that in school I wasn't necessarily worried about our girls' academic growth, but their social and emotional growth. And, to tell the teacher that up front and just communicate, establishing what your expectations are against the culture of the classroom and the culture that the teacher has established in that classroom will be a beautiful relationship, or it will ignite a fire.
I mean, I can remember years where the teacher would send out information early saying these are the values that we're going to have in this classroom. What happens when you have a teacher that it's not so easy to communicate with?
You communicate.
Okay.
You communicate, and you there's no such thing as over communication in my mind. A teacher can't over communicate, and a parent can't over communicate. I always try to remember to be respectful of the teacher's time. Teachers have 0 time in any given school day, and whether that is homeschool, parochial school, doesn't matter. They're busy, whether that teacher is a parent or a regular classroom teacher. And so to find out, does the teacher handle email better, or a written letter better, or a checklist? If your child's really struggling with staying on task and you know that, then to come into the class saying, hey, I've got this little checklist, if we could maybe at least once a day just mark how much time on task there is or isn't, is very helpful. But I think, first of all, to say this is a new start. And whatever happened last year, good, bad, or indifferent, we now have a new year. And there's something really sweet, I think, about a new school year. Of course, I'm a teacher, I would say that.
Hey friends, there is a wonderful podcast that's part of our JourneyWise podcast network that I have listened to every episode and I love it. And it's called Choosing Cheer. And the host is Nicolette Bell, who is our Chief Operating Officer and one of our teachers. Nicolette, tell us about Choosing Cheer.
I grew up as a cheerleader. And so I had learned this verse in John as a little girl where Jesus says, in this world, you will have trouble. It's a promise, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And I learned that verse as a young girl on how to have a positive attitude.
Sure.
And so cheerleading was more to me than a sport growing up. It was a mindset that I had. And as I grew older and began to dig in the scriptures, I began to realize the connection that had to Jesus. And so we do a lot of talking about the joy of Jesus, finding the joy of Jesus in life's most difficult moments and then in life's everyday moments as well.
Well, anyone who knows you knows that you live this philosophy, this motto so well, and it does. It brings me a lot of joy to listen. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, I'll admit that, but the ones I do, I've become very faithful, and this is one of my favorites. Take a listen. Choosing Cheer with host Nicolette Bell. James, if there are things going on in the family, maybe there's been a recent divorce or maybe there's been some unsettledness or loss, how would you communicate to the teacher through that letter possibly, or in other ways, that there have been some roadblocks or obstacles?
I think it would be helpful for the teacher to know, whether it was myself as a parent or if I have an older child, maybe junior high, I would really try to encourage them to speak to the teacher initially, trying to help them with those communication skills. But yeah, I think it's important. I think too, parents need to know that it's perfectly fine to have boundaries in that. And what I mean is you can let them know the big picture without answering their questions per se.
Sure.
So you can maintain some privacy and even some of your child's privacy, but let them know, look, there's some significant changes and stressors happening right now. And, if you're working with a therapist or a physician or whoever, a counselor, they may could give you even some talking points with that teacher just to give them some things they might could do with the child at school if something comes up. Maybe say they see them very nervous in a situation. Well, that teacher may not know breathing exercises, but a one-page, piece of paper
Sure.
Yeah.
could explain that and just say, hey, this really helps, my child when they get overwhelmed, or maybe a timeout, if they come up to you and have a code word, and they use that code word, if you'll let them walk outside for a minute. So maybe giving the teacher some ideas
Yeah.
is just as important as letting them know what's happening.
Sure.
I work a lot in the exceptional education world, and often kids are protected by IEPs or 504 plans. And one of the first things we ask in those meetings are, what are your concerns? What are any major life changes that have taken place? And things like siblings going to college. You may think, well, that's just kind of what happens, but to a younger sibling, that can be a major event.
Sure.
The loss of a grandparent. I mean, I don't say it flippantly, but the loss of a pet,
Absolutely.
a significant pet in their lives. And that might have happened, a month ago, but that doesn't mean the child's processed all of the grief. And so seeing a puppy may evoke a different emotion. You bring it in as a therapy animal and the kid has a meltdown. There was just no point
Sure.
of reference for that.
Oh, that's good.
One of the things too, I think is really important, and for those of us with multiple kids, you can run into struggle, is individualize those conversations as much as you can.
Talk about that.
Well, so back to school shopping is a big thing. We offer, tax incentives for it. If there's any way though that you can individualize,
Yeah.
even if it's to go pick out your pencil box or a backpack or lunchbox or whatever, I'm not saying spend hundreds of dollars, but if you can individualize that 10 or 15 minutes with that kiddo at the beginning of the year to say, hey, we're starting a new adventure, and it's important that you have some things you like. Now, a lot of classroom teachers want 3 red folders, 2 yellow folders, 5 orange folders, or whatever, but they're pretty lenient on what kind of pencil they use or what kind of backpack they bring to school. Things that help the kid realize I'm an individual and I matter. I matter in this family, and my opinion matters. You may not always get what you want, but we do value that you like green and your sibling likes purple or
Sure.
whatever it would be.
Good. Okay. This is the very important thing, and almost nobody can do it. Okay. How do you establish routines? Really, routines help so much. Children just really do well when they can do that.
Establishing expectations up front eliminates conflict. And those expectations, not just with bedtime and rules, but with technology. What is acceptable, what's unacceptable. If not, we start the first day of school. Our expectation as a parent, you come home from school and you do your homework. There's often not much homework those first few days. The kid's expectation is I come home, I do what I want to.
Freedom.
And, and I get my device, whatever it is, or my game for X amount of hours. And those conflicts that just sets you up for such a negative impact, because then when homework does roll in, something's got to go. And I don't think a device is too much to say, hey, summer's over. Again, though, that 2-week taper down time will allow them to realize, oh, okay, yeah, now I've got to read books if you didn't do that during the summer, or whatever the expectation is.
Have to wear shoes, put on a
that's
shirt.
true. Yeah.
My boy grandchildren, it's wear clothes.
Wear clothes, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's a great question, because I know that it is a different cultural approach, a school day versus a
Summer
go
day.
have fun day.
Yeah.
And so much trouble that I've heard of kids getting into was because the cultural the collision among the two cultures, oftentimes.
And it's expectation.
Yeah.
And I think as parents, we have to be a united front too. I think so many times we look to one parent or the other to set the rules, and if those can all be established in the same company, so to speak, and to understand, the 14-year-old's bedtime may be different than the 7-year-old's bedtime, and that's okay. You know, fair doesn't mean everybody gets the
same.
same. It means everybody gets what they need.
Yeah, our 7-year-old wanted to, she said, is there a committee I can bring this in front of? Because this doesn't
Human
seem
rights
right.
committee.
Yeah, there's got to be an HR department here.
Yeah.
What else do you have, Ronnie? I know you've got several questions.
Well, being a pediatrician or having been a pediatrician for a long time, I still have to emphasize how you eat, how you sleep, and how you exercise.
Amen.
I mean, you do have to be careful what you sacrifice, like for homework. I mean, you know, like some schools, especially as they start getting on up in the middle school or even later elementary school, have a lot of homework. I mean, which I'm not too much in favor of,
Well,
but
see, I'm not either. And I think because I was a teacher, I was not shy about saying, hey, my kid's only going to spend 3 hours doing homework at home.
Yeah.
Anything beyond that, yeah, we're not playing that game. Of course, I felt like I had the authority to say that because I was a teacher. But, you know, a lot of teachers will often agree as they get into those classes, they don't sometimes realize, well, 30 minutes of homework from every subject, and you've got an overloaded
right.
kiddo who, you know, they don't know what's hot and cold right now,
Right.
much less, you know, homework becomes such a hot topic for debate and whether or not it makes any difference.
Well, and the different abilities. You know,
Yes.
like some children read fast, some children
Yes.
don't, and that just reading a page can be very, not only time consuming, but extremely mentally fatiguing.
Absolutely.
And so I think that parents just need to be careful that they don't sacrifice, in particular, my biggie is sleep. You know, keeping them up till midnight to finish homework is not going to do well for the next day. And then exercise has
Yeah,
been
I was
shown.
gonna say, yeah.
Exercise has been shown. Studies. You can go to the National Institute of Mental Health and research. Do exercise and mental health, or just cognitive ability, not just your emotional health, but your cognitive ability improves as you get. You don't have to go out and run a marathon, but just walking. And I think family walks in the afternoon are great times, not only for the exercise, and most of us parents need it too, but also a great time to communicate. How was your school day? Not what grades did you make,
Right.
but just how was your school day?
Well, and for parents to be willing to share how their day was too. Because a lot of times we ask kids, how was your day? And we get the one-word response.
Fine.
And if you go around the table, if you ask the parents, you would probably get the same response. And so we had a habit at our house when we sat down for dinner, which was not every night. When you talk about schedules and routines, to me, schedules are flexible. Routines stay the same. Because some days we didn't know who was picking up somebody from school or dance or whatever, and how, you know, kiddos in backpacks were changing cars, and, you know, the schedule every day could change, but the routine of you get up and you brush your teeth and you get dressed, you go to school, you do homework.
You get picked up.
Yeah, somebody's going to pick you up. If that doesn't happen, there's a
Or
problem.
you get a phone call, where are you? I'm not there. Oh, well, your child is. Okay, miscommunication. But the ability then to teach your kids, because schedules will change, you know, but the routine, we all get up in the morning, hopefully, and brush our teeth and eat breakfast, and exercise, I think, is key to that. I would add in there drinking water, but, you know, that's my
part of
own.
diet. No, that's part of diet. I mean, headaches. A lot of children wake up with headaches in the morning. A lot of times that's because of the stress, anxiety, but also because they don't have an adequate water
Wow.
intake. So if we don't get the basics right, the other problems that come along are compounded.
Yes.
They're you know, important to do that.
Well, the number one way, and this is, people don't like hearing this, and I understand I don't really like to hear it, but the number one way that kids learn and get prepared is through modeling. So as a parent, when you know school's coming, or maybe it's more homework this year, if you can model trying to be healthy and then bring them along, you're going to get a much better result. It can't be do as I say, not as I do. It has to be, hey, come do it with me, and we'll get through this.
That's a great point.
Well, and that has a lot to say. This is another one that's very difficult, and that is devices.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, you sit over there and read while
drinking water.
Well, drinking
Devices,
water. But
exercise.
you sit over there and read while I'm on my device or
Sure.
while I'm doing,
While
something.
I'm surfing the internet.
Yeah,
or
that sort of
whatever.
stuff. So family reading, I tell parents the best thing you can do for your child as far as reading is concerned is help them love reading.
Read and
Read
write all
with
the
them,
time.
read, and then read the same little book and talk about it. You
Yeah,
know?
I get that question all
Yes.
the time. My child wants to read, the Foot Book by Dr. Seuss every night. I'm like, great. They're like, great. I hate it. I was like, I had 6 books memorized. But the familiarity allows them to begin to see the squiggles on the page have meaning. That meaning we can communicate with, and I mean that's where literacy begins.
We were on a driving trip to Washington D.C. and Pokey had bought the audiobook for the book Flipped. I don't know if you've seen that book, but the first half of the book, it goes from the boy's perspective. You flip it over and read it from the girl's perspective of their relationship coming together. And I remember we got to Williamsburg and Pokey said, Charlottesville, and Pokey said, well, we'll just pick that up tomorrow. I was like, no, no, I got to know how this thing's going to finish.
How the boy does.
Yeah, I mean,
Road trips were reading time for us. I always picked a book, and it was hard because there was a 7-year age variance. But we spent a lot of time in our cars with carpool, and so use an audiobook, especially if it's one. Question I have all the time is my child doesn't read as their fluency isn't where it should be, and I'm like, then give them an audiobook while they follow along. Oh, that's cheating. No, not at all. It helps because some children do have to read a text 2, maybe 3 times. Well, so maybe if we read it with our eyes and hear it with our ears, we only have to read it a second time. And
I mean, that'd be like telling someone, no, you can't use GPS and a map. I mean, you're trying to get somewhere.
right.
It's going to
not
help
how.
you.
It's not how.
It's not how.
Well,
So,
we homeschool. We've got 4 kids, youngest 5, oldest 11, and my wife's a saint, and she reads to them. I would say no less than an hour in the mornings, and we have at least 3 with dyslexia, and possibly the 4th. And so, what's really cool is they can be doing different things, and you think they don't. Like, I'll be standing there almost frustrated that they're not paying better attention.
Right. They're doodling.
They're
or
doing
coloring.
stuff, and she's just faithfully sitting there and reading, and all of a sudden one of them will go, wait a second, and have a question.
Yeah.
And they've been paying attention the whole time. I think one thing for parents to know and is just that I've seen what that does for them is it helps them fall in love with stories before they're able to read.
yeah.
And that is so awesome.
Yeah.
Power of narrative.
Yeah.
Friends, we're going to be back for a second episode where we're going to talk more specifically about learning anxieties and about conditions that may require a little bit extra need and focus. So we'll do that. I know a lot of parents out there going, well, you didn't talk about what my child is going through. We'll talk about a little bit more specifically next, but thank you both for being on JourneyWise. This has been a great conversation.